Like, well, wait, I'm not getting something right because I can't see anything. And I was like, okay, it must be because something is broken inside of me.
Did you actually eventually result in being able to have past life memories through this method? Or
No, I completely abandoned that because my understanding grew and I had to go beyond this past life identity search that many people have.
Unlocking the Soul, a podcast hosted by Rob Cimperman and produced by Simplify Films.
Welcome to the Unlocking the Soul podcast with your host, Rob Cimperman. Today, for our 68th topic, we're going to be talking about aphantasia and the ability to perform past life regression hypnosis therapy without the clear ability to picture images in your mind. So first, what is aphantasia? Well, when I heard that word, I instantly finally understood what Phantasia, the old Disney movie, was referring to. Because in Phantasia, they are putting imagery and vivid imagery to classical songs. And that really sums it up, because Phantasia is the ability to see vivid images in your mind. So aphantasia, of course, is the opposite of that. It's the inability to see images in your mind. So there's actually a scale. So I want you to go through a little test with me. Close your eyes and picture a red apple. So 1 on the scale, which is the hyperphantasia side, so great ability to see imagery, would be if this apple is perfectly realistic, as clear as seeing a red apple. While number 2 is realistic and reasonably clear. Number 3 is moderately realistic and clear. 4 would be dim, vague, faint outlines. Or 5, and this is the aphantasia side, is no image. I only know I'm thinking of a red apple. And you may not have even considered your ability on this scale. Even my own personal family is all over the map on this. My youngest is saying that she's number 1. She can see it very clear. She can see the texture. She can, see the different colors on it. She can tell what it tastes like by visualizing it. While my son is closer to the other scale, the other end of the scale, saying that it is pretty vague. I think I'm pretty much in the middle. But personally, I see the apple fine. It's the colors I have trouble with. I can see red in like a swatch almost, and I can see the apple, but the apple itself is kind of a gray, and I can kind of go back and forth between seeing the color and seeing the clear apple, but I have a hard time seeing the apple as bright red. Now, the frustration is obvious here. In hypnosis sessions, the therapist asks you to visualize many different things throughout the session, whether it's floating on a cloud or walking down a hallway. I want to take a quick look at a submission on Reddit that you can find under the r/Unlocking the Soul community. And it comes from Frenzy R2022. And it says, aphantasia and hypnotherapy / past life regression. I'm a 43-year-old male and have full multisensory aphantasia. I'm spiritually very active despite an inability to visualize consciously. In many ways, it's actually an advantage, especially during meditation. I've experienced a few out-of-body experiences and am curious about regression as practiced by Peter Jan Elson, When Souls Awaken, and Michael Newton's Journey of Souls. Has anybody in this group attempted hypnotherapy, particularly with regards to past life regression and the time between lives? I've contacted several hypnotherapists, but so far they are either unfamiliar with aphantasia or are reluctant to try. If no personal experience with hypnotherapy, I'm still interested in people's experiences with regards to spirituality or pointers to information about it with aphantasia. I would suggest limiting responses, not to start a religious discussion on what's right or wrong. I was specifically asking for people with the above experience, looking forward to replies or sources of information. So that's what we're going to do today. I actually have a special guest that's going to join me, who has some experience with this particular topic or combination of topics. So we're lucky to be joined today by Alexander Decoutre from Montreal, and he's going to walk us through his transition from a frustrated hypnotherapy subject to developing his own understanding of meditation and channeling that allows him to access the wisdom of his higher self and subconscious. And hopefully he has some tips that may be helpful to others that are dealing with that same challenge. So, Alex, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for accepting the friend request and the amazing chat. This is uh, unprecedented for me because I don't usually do this kind of stuff. But I don't know. I felt drawn to sending you a message after watching on Tubi the show you created, the documentary, which was really insightful. And yeah, also I discovered a few names that I hadn't a rabbit hole, so allowed me to start a new rabbit hole. So thank you.
Yes, yeah, so this is great. You actually went through the process to become a QHHT Dolores Cannon licensed hypnotherapist?
So I can tell you the story. It's not exactly that, but it's pretty close. So I started what I could call like a spiritual awakening, but essentially my old belief systems were starting to crumble, and I went through this whole phase where I was carving a whole new universe, and Dolores Cannon came as um, something that really caught my interest. And I was like, well, wait, if kind of like what you were saying in your documentary, if it's repeatable, then it's scientific, and if it's scientific, then there must be pattern, there must be a lead, there must be a logic. And so I really like that aspect. And so I'm an engineer. I worked in electricity and IT now, but I really like the scientific approach as like uh, a principle in life, not so much about being taught science in general, but like the scientific approach, repeatable answers, which is very different. Some people are like, oh, no, we calculated it, so it always has to be the same. Wait a minute, wait a minute. All the revolutions that happen in science were always about someone saying, wait, I don't think we're exactly quite right with what we were saying before, you know, being heliocentric and stuff like that. But going back to the story with Dolores Cannon. So I discovered her books. I read probably most of them. And I started with Michael Newton and Jane Roberts. And then I went on to the Law of One. So the raw material, which is a channeled material that I talked a bit about. And then I was like, okay, this is what I want to do for a living. I want to become a QHHT therapist. I went and did some on myself, and I was like, well, wait, I'm not getting something right because I can't see anything. And I was like, okay, it must be because something is broken inside of me. So I will continue to pursue this, and I will fix myself until I'm able to visualize. It must be because I'm not getting something. So that's how I started um, with this whole journey.
We should just be clear that aphantasia is not a disorder. I saw a great description that it's almost like being left-handed. It's just a different way that some people's brains work. It's got pluses and minuses. It's not a negative or it's a disorder that needs to be fixed.
It's exactly that. But at the time, I didn't even know the name. I just thought I couldn't visualize because I had a problem or something like that. So I was like, okay, I read all these books. I tried it myself. It's still not working. The only solution is for me to go into the theoretical part of what it is to go under hypnosis. And so I looked around and I saw the QHHT, the beyond quantum. There's a lot of different variations of this. What I did is I went on this e-learning platform and I ordered a bunch of very low cost um, similar trainings that were done by South Africans, by Scottish people, uh, that cost only like 20, 30 bucks. But I did a few of them, and then I was like, oh, okay, I understand the underlying principle that explains how you can get into a hypnotic state. And and then I was like, okay, well, once you get to that hypnotic state, you turn into what I would call your lucid self. And your lucid self visually talks to you through the SE, the subconscious. That's what a lot of Dolores Cannon talks about. And so your SE comes in and gives you visuals. And some people say, all right, well, it's your past lives. And the more I studied this, the more I realized it's not necessarily past, but maybe more parallel lives. And so I started practicing my own version of QHHT with a bunch of friends, and then I realized that people don't delve into their previous lives necessarily. They dive into whatever visual is coming up. And a lot of my experiences with visual people have been that sometimes it's their memories, sometimes it's not themselves, sometimes it's aliens, sometimes it's insects, and it just takes so many different forms. I was like, okay, well, it's not just past lives, and it's more. It's something that has to do with something deeply embedded in your subconscious, and once you get to the theta state, then your subconscious will draw to you visually all the elements that you can interpret symbolically, and that will help you. And so, then you can go into the theory of, oh, well, if you lived this in a previous life and it shows up in a session, then you can understand that there's some lingering energy that you can work on. And this takes various forms. And then I was like, okay, this is not working for me. I can do it on people. It works. I've had various experiences with a lot of friends slash clients or even family members, all visual, all visual. And I was like, all right, I'll just go back to my regular 9 to 5 job. And then after I quit doing that, my partner said, hey, there's this thing called Aphantasia. You should probably look into it. And I started reading. I was like, oh boy, okay, this is what's actually going on. And then I realized that when I had done the QHHT sessions for myself, um, there were two parts in the session. The first part was getting the visual part, which was extremely frustrating because I can get it. They're like, all right, so what do you see? I was like, darkness, black, just black, darkness. And then they were like, well, all right, so try to focus on this. What do you see now? Still nothing. So that was the very frustrating part for me. But then the second part is, and so this is something that's done in the QHHT sessions, like the proper official ones. Um, so they call in your SD. They ask your SD, all right, can I have the permission to come in? Can I talk to your subconscious? And so when the practitioner did that on me, that's when I started talking in a way I don't usually talk. And I realized that I was actually non-visually doing some form of channeling. And then I was like, well, a lot of the stuff I said was stuff I knew essentially, but I wasn't telling myself. And I'm the kind of person that doesn't really like when people tell me what to do. But if I'm saying it to myself, I have to listen, right? And so I started developing this new understanding of hypnotherapy and the QHHD elements with the fact that I actually uh, can get into a theta state and start working on my own power, which is connecting with oneness through darkness, and then being able to connect dots that weren't connected before. And once that kind of clicked in my brain, and I've been practicing auto hypnosis mostly. So getting into a meditative state, the theta state, and then just like connecting dots that weren't connected before. So drawing from the darkness and connecting visual points. And it's been a very interesting experience. And to be honest, I didn't think it would be possible to gain that much knowledge in a short amount of time using this technique.
So, did you actually eventually result in being able to have past life memories through this method, or?
No, I completely abandoned that uh, because my understanding grew, and I had to go beyond this past life identity search that many people have by simply understanding that, well, simply, it's kind of complicated. The now moment is the only element that exists, and we live in this sort of looping universe. And so the past, the present, and the future is almost the same in a looping universe as a principle. And so what's considered as the past is it can be archetypal actually, and it's always relevant to the now moment.
Right.
So that's a different take I have on this.
And well, I mean, as I'm sure you'll know from Dolores Cannon's writings, even she was beyond past life interest pretty early on in her career. She used it as like a bridge to get people into the right state, but as quickly as possible, she'd move on to talking to the superconscious or the higher self about what's important to know for the person, just having conversations about, knowledge. I'd imagine she was probably it's probably pretty boring hearing 100 or thousands of clients talk about living as a farmer or whatever, previous lives. So she obviously, but it sounds like you went through that same evolution, realizing that the past life is curious. You're curious about it, but that's not the point of regression hypnotherapy.
I'm still curious, to be honest, but I'm like, all right, I'm not going to.
So how would you describe the technique that you went through in like a series of steps? If someone else has aphantasia and they want to experience something similar, like what's kind of like step 1 through 5 that would get you there?
My understanding of how our brain functions is that it's a simplified version of how it actually works. But we have three brains. We have the reptilian brain, which is all about survival and reaction and threats. Then we have the limbic brain, which is all about emotions, and then we have the neocortex. Um, so that's kind of how I understand how the brain functions. And so whenever I want to get to a theta state, which is the hypnotic state, uh, I need to understand that there are several steps to get there. The first one is to calm down the nervous system, which is the reptilian brain. So that involves deep relaxation. So that's how I always get into a hypnotic state. I always need to go through that phase. I can't um, run to the grocery store and get into a theta state. I have to lay down, take deep breaths, relax, close my eyes. Once I calm my body, then my second brain shows up, and that's the emotions. So that's uh, all the things I have to do during the day that are stressing me out. Oh, okay, my kids are coming home. I have to go grocery shopping, or oh, I have this thing to do at work. I have to plan a new meeting, and so my brain goes through this other phase where I have to take care of my personal stuff that's stressing me out. And so when that happens, I usually just like make a giant to-do list. To be honest, that's what that's what I do. And once I'm done with that, my brain is completely free to wander. And and so that's when I get into the hypnotic state and connect with this infinite darkness. And the way I understand it now is I'm actually connecting to oneness. Because if everything is one, then darkness is part of the one and it's a representation of it. And I don't know how to say otherwise because it's non-visual, but it's like a thread of thoughts that is increasingly faster than what usually I can render as a human. And then it starts kind of like a branching exercise from going from one thought to another. But this will expand in a greater way and start connecting elements that were not connected before. I don't know, like um, grocery shopping and snow. I don't know. I'm just saying an example that doesn't make sense, but and that's when I get tremendous insights on maybe how certain elements of our universe or our reality are rendered, and that's always interesting. That's where I get all the crazy fun thoughts.
You're not trying, because like in meditation, often when the thought pops up, you notice it, you acknowledge it, then you move it to the side, and then you kind of clear the slate again. But you're doing more of a contemplative meditation, I guess, where you kind of follow one thought to the next. And so in this state, I imagine you're lying in your bed in the dark and you're having these thoughts. What do you what do you do with them? You follow them for a while and see if any big insights come out, or you write them down, or
I I I draw. I write. I try to organize my thoughts because it's kind of like Lego building where I will have a block and then there's this new block. Oh, I can put them together. And then they just stack. But it's also correlated to what I'm interested in, which is spirituality, the occult, religion, patterns, symbols, divine geometry. And so because I spend a lot of time working on that, then when I'm meditating, it kind of comes together in a different way. Like I'll connect dots that weren't connected before. So yeah, I think that's how I would describe what's going on.
Just one more question on the process. Do you try to guide it to a particular topic, or do you completely let it go wherever? Like you said, if a shopping list comes up, you say, that's fine. Let's see what comes up next. So it doesn't matter what comes up, or do you try to like focus on a topic?
It doesn't. I don't. Well, it's often connected to what I will be studying at that moment. So, for example, I'm studying the tree of life in the Kabbalah. Well, that will show up, or I'm studying the chakra system. That will show up in my thoughts. Um, I don't necessarily do it intentionally. It's kind of okay. Like how you make popcorn? It just pops. That's how it works. That's how it works. I think that's the best analogy to explain what's going on because it's hard to explain. It's like I know something, but I don't know how I know it, and I know it instantly. But you can't really say that to people because they're like, "Well, you kind of wacko, Alex. Like, what's going on?" And I'm like, "Well, um, maybe that's something that internal senses should be explored. What is intuition? Does intuition mean the same thing for everyone? Um, how do you know when you recognize something?" And so all this research in hypnotherapy led me to internal senses and how they function. Like how does visualization work for everyone? Um, are you seeing stuff on top of reality? Are you seeing stuff when your eyes are closed? Are you seeing videos? Are there in black and white? Are there memories? Are you seeing written elements when you think? And I like to ask these questions, and many people just have so many different answers and didn't even know that people had different internal senses. But I think that is the key to actually understanding your own power, which is connecting with yourself, which is connecting with your intuition, and then letting that guide you. But the way I explain it can be relevant maybe for people with aphantasia, but maybe not for other people. So, but I always ask like, how do your internal senses function? Like dyslexic people, I learned recently in their mind's eye can have objects rotate. I was like, okay, that's a useful skill for a handyman. Like maybe a lot of handymen are actually,
Yeah.
you know, it's an example, but I'm curious. Like, have you've had experiences too, and you said that you see things written down sometimes? Yeah.
Yeah, so I went through a session with someone who was trained in the QHHT method and also someone that was trained in Michael Newton's method. And in both times, first of all, yes, there's tons of emphasis on visualizing,
Yeah.
floating on a cloud and looking down for a scene or walking down a hallway, looking at the what each door is like made out of to see which one like speaks to you about which past life, and going down the staircase for each year of your life as you go down. And all those were okay. I mean, I think I was able to visualize enough. But then you get to the point where it's like you open the door and like, what do you see? And that's what I similarly like nothing yet. It's got a lot of darkness, and then makes you wonder whether when you do come up with something, I think a lot of people get that feeling of, is it just me making up words? I mean, so I did have some remembrances of a couple different past lives, drowning next to a sinking ship, and another was working as like a shopkeeper in like, I don't know, 1800s Germany or something, as like a tending a shop. And then, but that one actually was the most convincing because I had like a second segment of that one where I was like going to another town in a horse-drawn carriage to retrieve my child who got killed there while he was an apprentice. And it was like, it was emotional. I think that's like the one thing that felt like it was the most real out of any of it, was because I actually felt emotion. I actually like, it was about like, almost felt a tear in my eye being this guy that was going through that. It was very, very moving. So like that's the one thing that really convinced me that there's something to this, that it's not just coming up with a story, because I felt like I was in it. But but I never, but then there's always, okay, progress then to your next life, or talk to your higher self, or ask for someone to join you to explain. And I never really got anything beyond the past lives. So I wasn't really satisfied, because you read the books, and there's the higher self is talking to you about all kinds of things in your life and your future and your health. I never got to any of that. But then I did try actually channeling, And I have a segment on that also about, I have about 9 different sessions that I have in my segment. And it's, the technique I used there was from Sarah Landon. And I broke it down to like 5 steps basically. Like you move your consciousness down into your heart. You focus on, first of all, you relax, of course. You move your consciousness down into your heart and you feel that. Um, you basically open yourself up to whatever is going to come to your mind. And I sit there with a tablet of paper, and but I felt like was starting a sentence and with whatever word comes to my mind, and not thinking at all about where the sentence is going to go, but then just focus on or just let the next word that comes off of that word come to your mind and write that down. And then every sentence kept completing itself, and they were actually pretty good stories about different topics. Everything. And the thing, you could ask questions. You could ask leading questions. So it's like, well, what is alien disclosure going to be like, or what's going to happen with the environment, or like, you ask about politics, you ask about anything, and then you just let whatever comes come. And I would write 2 or 3 pages as an answer, and they were pretty good. I mean, they were completely reasonable, cohesive, comprehensive answer to that question. And it was really fascinating. And again, there's no visualization in that. So it really appealed to me. So maybe it's something, it's similar to, similar to what you're doing if you were just doing your technique, I think, with a pad of paper in front of you. um, so it's definitely something to try. So what appeals to me when you reached out originally was thinking about that kind of that sliding scale between regression, hypnotherapy, imagery, and completely verbal channeling. And obviously someone that's not going to be great at visualizing images is more on the channeling side. But it might just be the same phenomenon, just tapping into your higher self and getting it down into thoughts and words, whether you're doing it with your eyes closed and more of a self-hypnosis form, or just letting the channels flow. Obviously Jane Roberts versus Dolores Cannon are kind of like the two ends of that, but they're not that different. They both came up with similar guidance from higher beings.
That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that. In my exploration of hypnotherapy, I discovered and I experienced a bit of shamanism. The shamanism can take very different forms. It was more like an urban shamanism thing I went to through some friends who were practitioners, and essentially instead of relaxing and getting into a theta state to get to a hypnotic state, they play the drums, and that's how you get into a hypnotic state too. The drum beat is kind of like your heartbeat, so then you connect with that, or the bowls, the Tibetan bowls,
Yeah.
and you get into a different state of mind. But you do it as a group, which is very different as a dynamic, and it's also very visual, which did not work for me.
My brother is very into shamanism and drum circles. He's done countless drum circles around the world, and
Oh, okay. So you know about the okay.
he has tons of books on shamanism. I tried reading one, I just could not get into it, but it was just dense. I think it was like an academic book, but I know there's a lot to it. I've not explored that yet. It's just such a big body of knowledge.
The way I understand shamanism is that they take symbolism and apply it to nature. So they apply whenever you cross paths with an animal, then you look into the symbolism of that animal, and usually symbolism is essentially describing how the animal functions on a day-to-day basis, and that will give you some form of wisdom. And they do the same with plants, which I don't really understand. Moon cycles and other cycles than the sun cycles we had through the Roman calendar. Uh, but it's kind of a mix of many different spiritual understandings I've come across. But it's pretty intense. If you can go deep into shamanism.
Yeah.
I didn't feel connected to it too much either, actually.
A lot of them also, I think they bridge into hallucinogenic tools as well, right?
That's interesting because one of my biggest insights that I discovered when I was going through this whole process of going into auto hypnosis is that uh, one of the biggest, to me, gap to bringing spirituality to another level is actually to combine it with regular science, such as psychology. And people don't think of it, uh, but if you're trying to get into a state where you're aligned and psychologically something is going on with you, your channel or your channeling will be affected by that. Um, I do believe there is some form of fractalization that occurs if you don't work on that psychological part, which explains why some channeled material feels a little more emotional than others. But Um, and so I was like, okay, well, what if I worked on my psychological aspect and go to regular therapy and also combine it with all this spiritual stuff? And then I came across how reality is rendered and how you're, you know, as within, so without, or whatever. I forget how they say that. And so that actually means how your mind functions. And psychological tools are super helpful to understand how to manipulate or alchemize your emotions or your state of mind and get to a metacognitive state where you're actually observing yourself thinking. And when you get to that state, you actually understand that we're emotional algorithms, and the trauma of the epicenter of our trauma is often our families and our close environment when we were kids. And I'm not saying this, but it's an algorithmic pattern that we just imprint when we're young and that we just carry on.
And then in your hypnotic state, was there anything else that came to you that's like a big idea that you want to?
One of the biggest one is could be very controversial, and I'm not someone who talks on like social media and stuff, but a lot of what people refer to as new age spirituality talk about 5D and how 5D is the ascended planet and it's a different timeline and stuff like that. And I was like, well, wait a minute. How do we get from 3 to 4 to 5D? That doesn't really make sense. Like, how do you? I don't understand that. And I read a lot of books on it, and I said, all right, go into love, and then blah blah blah, and then the Earth splits, and you ascend, and you fly, whatever. I was like, it doesn't make any sense. And then I started exploring what does it mean dimensionally, and that's when I had my biggest epiphanies, and I realized that we're not in 3D. um, so we live in a in a spectrum of 7 colors, which is the rainbow, which the rainbow is essentially the chakras. It's the same layout. When you think about it that way, it's easier to understand. And then you're like, okay, well, if the sun goes through us and we're water, and the rainbow is the sun and water, then okay, the chakras is kind of like a rainbow version of ourselves. You can kind of, it's easier to understand when you explain it that way than being like, all right, root is red and it's like survival, and orange is yeah, it makes more sense to understand it like that, I think. And then they're like, okay, well, um, if these colors are fixed, it doesn't really make sense. But what if they're dimensions? And I was like, well, okay, so the first dimension is unity. Okay. Um, so unity is a state where you feel um, mindful, you feel complete. You don't need anything else outside of yourself, which I guess is maybe what the core of root chakra is actually about. And then you move on to the sacral, which is the second dimension, and that's the emotions. But what does it mean to from the first to the second dimension? If everything is one, then two is actually an illusion and it's also one, which means that separation doesn't actually occur unless you see it as differentiated and then you get to dualism instead of polarities. And I'm like, oh, so this means humanity as a whole is stuck in the second dimension. We're not even in third dimension. We have the potential to access the seven dimensions. I do believe that. But humanity as a whole, we're actually stuck in the second dimension. And I was thinking of this. I was like, okay, well, during the pandemic, everyone went. virtual. And I used to tell people, I hate it when we go virtual. Well, no, it's great because I can talk to you, and that it would be inconvenient for me to go from Montreal to where you live, right? But um, as a day-to-day basis, when you talk to people, they're actually in 2D on the screen, and so we went from 3 to 2D, and I think that that's kind of a sign from the universe saying you guys are not in 3D, you're actually in 2D, which doesn't mean we're stuck there.
We need the meta goggles so we can see each other in VR. So we just,
Yeah, I'm 6'4", actually. You can't tell, but those are the kind of insights I got from these meditative states, and then I started like uh, essentially challenging all the assumptions that were given to me throughout life. Um, how do we learn? Uh, what is math? What does zero mean? What does zero mean? And that one got me thinking a lot. I was like, well, okay, one is everything. Okay, right. So it's the whole oneness of the big giant thing, right? And zero is nothing. What does that mean? It means it's nothing of everything. So it's actually the same concept as one. It's just a reverse image of it. Oh, wait. So does that mean that zero doesn't exist? Well, wait, what does that mean? And I was like, well, we have a zero in our calendar. M- Maybe the offset we get from having a zero in our calendar is that there is no year zero, and we're part of this giant oneness that's infinity, which is kind of scary when you think of it at first, but also reassuring, which means that after death, there's just a transitionary state to go into another state. And that's where, Dolores Cannon comes in with her, all right, this is how you go through life. So you incarnate, and there's a lot of interesting insights on what's on the other side. Uh, and so I was like, okay, so if zero doesn't really exist, and we're part of oneness, which is a whole, then we're experiencing time. We think of it as linear, but we're actually just living through loops. They're archetypal loops. So there's something very scary about that thought,
yeah.
but there's something deeply reassuring about the fact that there is an inherent, coherent pattern logic to what's going on. And I started documenting that. And I went through all my spheres in life, like when I grew up, my family, my childhood friends, when I went to school, when I started working, and I started charting like who were all these people, and I realized that everything is about archetypes, and it's been the same archetypes my whole life.
It's like watching a movie and it's like, oh, that's the character in the movie. That's the, the wise advisor. And that's the cocky guy that's going to get killed early. And like, it's like, it's,
Exactly. And so I've been, yeah, reality is very different. Uh, so first of all, if someone dies, I get to meet them later, so that's very reassuring. That's cool. It's like, okay, well, we'll get to talk again. It's not the end. But also, what do I make of all of this? Like, why is it that my brain got all of this stuff out of nowhere? I used to not be spiritual at all, like 3 years ago.
I wasn't until like maybe 10 years ago or a dozen years ago here.
Yeah, well, okay, I'd be curious how you went through this, because it often happens with like some form of catharsis or something that's like it usually occurs that way from what I've read.
My first foray into all this was actually through Buddhism. Taking classes. There's a Shambhala Buddhist center in DC that my wife and I were taking classes for 2 to 3 years and doing like weekend retreats. And I did a couple of week-long retreats. But then during that time period, I also got into Journey of Souls and Michael Newton and started reading that kind of in parallel. And I felt like I got from that into Dolores Cannon and Jane Roberts. And I felt like I almost got it feels pretentious to say it went beyond Buddhism, but Buddhism I think was a great way to understand the mind, but there's so much more. Yeah. So I kind of lost some of my focus on that. I felt like it was a great way to even reprogram my mind, my brain, my mind, my neural pathways and all with meditation. And I think it did change me forever. Instead of being so egocentric, I feel like I'm so much more connected and have much better perspective on things from that experience. But that just really cracked the door open. Actually, the first book, even before Michael Newton, the one I found that book from was Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. Yeah, and what I think it might even appeal to you too is it's really a scientific approach, and I walked away from that book thinking science actually does support the idea that this world is like a physical overlay on energy vibrational world, and that's what quantum physics is all about.
The
And
observer's effect. Yeah.
and he goes on into the all these different extrasensory and paranormal phenomenon using that explanation, and basically explains many different things in a really scientific way. And up to that point, like my big hang up about believing anything paranormal or even spiritual was like you said at the beginning of the discussion, the scientific method just makes so much sense. Why would we start believing things that science can't prove? And he has all kinds of evidence about why science did prove these things and how it got covered up. And if you look at it freshly, it it does not contradict, and in some cases really supports a lot of phenomenon. I mean, like the whole idea of like if this world was a schoolhouse built by energy beings, being our souls and the higher planes. If you went down as far as you could look inside a physical atom, you would see waves of energy, and we do. Like it's exactly what we find. And if everything was holographic, then you really could get any information from any point, and it's all connected, and there really is this unity that's split up into these different things we see and experience, but they're really all the entire unity in each one of them. I mean, it's like you were talking about, the power of, one and unity. Like, it really is a feature of the world. We just don't discuss it that way, but the evidence supports it.
Very simple to think everything is one, but it's also very complex and has a lot of implications, especially for your identity. Like if I am part of a whole, that means I am myself and part of the whole at the same time. That's a paradox that no one, but that's quantum. That's going from one to zero. So you are me in another form, and I am you in another form, and we are interfacing through this mirror, which is exchanging energy, and that's fascinating because when you can get someone well, when you acknowledge someone and see them as part of the whole, so even if they're, a-holes, okay, well, you're still part of the whole, even if I don't like you. And actually, what I don't like about you is probably a part of myself. That's how it works in psychology, right? Uh, but what does it mean if you consider someone your equal? Then they start becoming oneness like you. And then when you put two onenesses together, then you can add them. But then when you add them, you don't get two, you actually get three. And I think that's what the Trinity.
I was just about to bring up the Trinity when you're talking about the paradox between being one but being everything. I'm like, well, billions of people have been conditioned our whole lives to accept this Father, Son, and Holy Spirit all being somehow compatible with each other. Yeah.
You can find the Trinity in other forms, mind, body, spirit. There's a lot of different variations, and what's interesting is that most religions or spiritualities talk about the same topics in different ways. To be praying and meditating and shamanism ceremonies are kind of the same concept. Physiologically, you get to a theta state and you focus on a certain element. Yeah. Yeah, praying is also the same. The seven miracles of Christ, the seven chakras. Okay, there are a lot of parallels with this geometrical layer of all these elements. And as you said, like you can find a lot in one element, but then it doesn't mean that you have to choose and stick with it forever, because you can stack elements, and that's the beauty of exploring different realms. I really love that. So I think that you could relate to that with what you just said. Yeah. There are a lot of other implications to what I say about what it means for time. Living in a loop, living in this pattern, and working on yourself. Um, Internally, psychologically, and how that will have an effect on the outside world. which is only a reflection of your inner world. But only is a word that I don't really like. And what I would say is that it's an archetypal and symbolic reflection. And that takes a very different meaning because people mostly see the world as literal. And when you think of the concept of words, I'm French. My mother's American, and I moved to Montreal 12 years ago, and so now I'm French, American, Canadian. Uh, Trust me when I say this. Words, the same word means so many different things to different people, and then you're like, "Well, what does that mean?" That means that words are actually symbols, and they're approximations. But then you start applying that to everything around you, and you're like, "Okay, well, um,
That's a big Buddhist concept too, of course, labels. Yeah, you gotta identify the label, and then without the label, everything is empty. But empty is not negative. Empty is like empty of concept because it's in its pure form. So anything that's pure form is a thing, it's valid. But then you put concepts on it and label those concepts, and then you're just getting farther abstracted from its pure essence. So with meditation, you kind of like focus on, or like you try to see things with your five senses and say, okay, five senses aren't perfect, but that's the closest thing we have to seeing things as they truly are.
I think I read the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I read part of that book. I think that's connected to Buddha.
Yeah, I read parts of that just to see the like the Bardo concept, how similar that is to the interlife that Newton describes.
That's pretty intense. It was like, all right, so the point of life is learning how to die. I was like, oh, okay. No one says it like that, but okay. Like,
It's interesting to think about like these same ideas that we're talking about that we're fascinated about now. It's yeah the same thing the Buddhists talk about, the Christians talked about, the that's why one thing in my videos is about how prophecy is not dead. It's the same thing we're doing today, just by a different name. So somebody that ended up in the Bible, they were probably just doing this channeling that we're talking about. They're writing it down, and someone said, "Hey, that's pretty good," and they included it. But it's the same ideas. It's- Nothing changed in the last couple thousand years. It's still people self-meditating or getting messages from higher beings or their own higher self in different ways and getting things revealed to them using the language that made sense at their time with the imagery that made sense.
spirituality can be about escaping reality. I think it's about transmuting it now at this point. It doesn't have to do with fleeing. If you do like commit suicide, that's like a big no-no, and all the contract stuff you will sign up for, and you're actually missing out on the opportunity to incarnate as human, and it's actually a privilege, even if it can be super intense on a day-to-day basis for some people. You chose this, and then you're like, oh, okay. Let's try to make the best of it.
Yeah, I will put in a plug for probably my one of my most popular videos is called "Suicide and the Soul." It's all about
Oh, okay.
stuff I pulled from various different sources describing the implications.
Working on the psychological aspect can help you um, like understand your own patterns, which helps you respond instead of react in certain situations. I think that's important. But my spiritual compass ultimately is, if I'm reading something and is it fear or is it love? And well, but what does that mean geometrically? I think that love is about integration and fear is about division. And that's how I like to uh it's with that in mind that I read spirituality and religion. And when they're like, oh, if you don't do this, you're gonna go to hell, or if you don't meditate 3 times a day, then you're lazy. I was like, okay, that's fear energy. I understand the principle, which it's interesting what they're saying, but if there's some fear energy, I will observe it and not react to it. That's how I approach concepts more and more. It's easier that way, actually.
I've often said, and I've heard people say that you have to see what resonates with you, what feels right in your intuition. And along the example you just gave, like anytime people talk about reptilians and that whole conspiracy that there's like negative beings driving our country, I kind of back away from that for the same reason you just said. Like if I went down that hole, it feels like it's just leading to fear. And how's that going to help me?
It is, but it's interesting because Yeah, I thought a lot about the reptilians. I was like, okay, well, if our croc brain is the reptilian brain, it's only a subconscious massive projection of your own self, which is your reptilian brain. And I was like, oh, that's so fascinating. It makes sense, you know?
Yeah, it can't be a coincidence that the fear center of your brain is the reptilian, and that could all be a metaphor for people are becoming egocentric and fear driven, which it really does describe, especially the United States government right now. It's all about it's fear and exclusion, and everyone's trying to get you. And hopefully, you found that conversation as enjoyable as I did, and that there are some tips there that you can transition into your own practice. So as always, please make sure you like and subscribe to this channel to show your support, and share it with someone else who can benefit. And check out the r/Unlocking the Soul subreddit and share your stories or questions there. Thank you.